1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. In today's video, we're going to go over this menu here, the magic wand, which is the adjustments menu. We're just going to go through these real quick. I'll have individual videos that I do on each one, like I did for the clone one. You'll see a link for that in the description below. We're going to start here with hue, saturation, and brightness. I'm going to choose my layer without the sun. I've got the sun on a separate layer. We'll go to hue, saturation, and brightness, and that will allow us, in my abstract mountain picture here, to alter the colors of these objects. Now you'll notice that it goes through the color wheel for each color that's on the screen. So your yellows get moved over into the purple and blue and back and forth. And then if you look at the sky, which is blue, it's also shifting around the color wheel, but it starts from blue and goes from there. Once you have done whatever adjustments you want, you can actually tap once on the screen, and you can do an apply, undo, preview, cancel, or reset. So if I reset this, we're now back at the original picture. Let's look at the saturation. We can make our colors more saturated or make it all the way down to black and white. You can do the same thing with the brightness. You can make it really bright. You can darken it up and give it a little bit more of a moody quality to the picture. I tap once on the screen with my finger, and I'm going to tap on cancel, and that brings us out and back to the original picture. Let's tap on the adjustments menu again, and we're going to do color balance, curves, and gradient map. They all do about the same thing, but they do it differently. So here on color balance, you can cycle between cyan and red, magenta and green, and yellow and blue. If you tap on this little brightness symbol here, you can do shadows, midtones, and highlights. So under shadows, if I change the cyan red balance, you can see that that changes only part of the picture. The magenta green doesn't really do anything with this particular picture. The yellow blue will take what the program considers as shadows and cycle between those. If we go to midtones, you can see that you're changing different areas. And in this case, midtones has a magenta green. You can really ramp up the yellow or the blue. And we can do the same thing with the highlights between cyan and red, magenta and green, and yellow and blue. And what I'm going to do is use my finger, tap here, and click cancel. And you can do basically the same thing using curves. So gamma, which is what I have up here, let's do a reset. There we are. Gamma up here, this is your brightness. You can tap in the middle of your line and create a curve for your brightness to really fine-tune how you want that to work. This works with the red the green, and the blue the exact same way. So it's a way of fine-tuning the colors in your picture. And then if you go to Gradient Map, it's automatically going to select whichever one of these is here in the middle. So you can see you can cycle through all of these. And it's barely visible, but the one that's active is the one that is currently larger than the rest of them. If you want, you can create a new gradient by clicking on the plus sign here at the top right. And it shows up with a black box and a white box, which you can move back and forth to make it brighter or darker. Or, if we tap here on the white box, we can change that to a different color. We're going to change that to red here. We will change the black box to blue. And then it will affect the gradient between red and blue. But if you want, let's tap here in the middle, and that puts up a third box. And let's go with a green. And now you can change these three primary colors in any way you want. And you can see here on the slider it shows which one has more of whatever. So those are the three ways to change the actual colors in there, four if you count hue, saturation, and brightness. If we go to Gaussian Blur, then we swipe up the screen, we can make this get fuzzier or sharper. This is a good way to add like a misty effect. You can do motion blur the same way. We drag over here, and then as we move the stylus around the screen, we can change the angle of that blur. This is really good if you're doing an action scene, or even if you want to make 3D letters, you can blur them out at an angle as a shortcut. We can do a perspective blur, which actually has positional and directional. We blur that up, and you notice that it's blurring towards the big gray circle, which you can move around anywhere on your picture. If you go directional, then it's going to start from wherever this circle is and blur everything towards that at whichever direction that you're putting it in. Then if we go over here to noise, we can slide our cursor up and add some noise here. Right now I have it set for clouds, which is the pattern that it's using. You can scale that up. You can add octaves to it, which changes how things look. And you can change the amount of turbulence. Let's scale that down so we can see the turbulence a little better. And you'll see it just kind of sweep across the screen a little bit there. You can do this as clouds, billows, and ridges. If we tap on this lightning bolt down here, we can make it additive or turn that off, which kind of grays everything out. You can do a single channel or multi-channels. And if we zoom up, we can see the difference between single and multi. Add or subtract octaves, give it more or less turbulence. And that's a real good way to make pop art. Cancel out of that. You can do the same thing with Sharpen. If you slide this all the way up, you'll notice that you're getting pixelizations on the edges because it's trying to make the edges sharper. Under Bloom, when you turn that up, you notice it adds a bloom to whatever you have. The transition is how much that bloom gets overlapped by everything else. The size of the bloom makes it larger or smaller. And the burn is just like burn in photography. Now, the reason I have my sun on a separate layer is if I duplicate that and I add bloom to it, this is where you can get a nice quick glow from your sun. And then we have glitch. And glitch works the same way. You drag your stylus across the screen and it creates these extra artifacts. Right now, I have it set for artifact. You can increase or decrease the amount of artifacts. You can make your individual artifacts larger or smaller. And you can zoom them in or out so that you have them larger or smaller and more or less on the screen. The same thing works for wave. Signal, and divergence. It's just whichever way you want your glitch to happen. After glitch, we have halftone, and this is where you can bring this up and give it kind of a magazine look, a t-shirt look with your screen printing, or even go black and white with a newspaper. And you'll notice that in this case, my sun is not affected because it's on a separate layer. So this is a nice way to highlight that, hey, this is the sun. And we'll cancel out of all that. We can go to a chromatic aberration by perspective or displacement. Let's turn this aberration up, and what you're seeing, if we zoom in, is it's actually taking a shadow image and moving it out. And you change how that works by changing where your perspective is. You can have a transition added to it. You can change the fall off, which is how far away it stops working. And under displacement, you can do it the exact same way. You can displace 3 images You've got the original and two shadow images. You can give it a blur. And you can even change the transparency of that. So it's another nice way of manipulating your images. Then we've got Liquify, which many people have already learned about. If we go here to push, then we can change this entire picture into sort of an acrylic pour. You can twirl things right. You can twirl them left. The distortion on the twirling creates eddies. You can pinch things together. You can expand them. This is an interesting way of making a bubble effect on your normal pictures. You can add a crystal structure by simply placing your stylus down and leaving it there. And you can move those crystal effects by slowly moving your stylus. Edge works through movement to pinch together along the line that you are drawing here. And then, if you want, you can reconstruct portions of it. Let's say you didn't like how this goes, that's fine. Just put it right back where it was. You can adjust the entire picture as to how much distortion you've given, or you can reset the entire thing. And then under clone, I will link to the video that I have for that. But for the purpose of this, if I take this circle here and move it up to here, I can then draw on another part of the screen and get that same leaf, in this case, in a different place. I would recommend using a medium or a hard brush and painting over it that way. That way you can get a bigger area done. Now I've lifted up. I'm going to paint the same image down here. And there you go. This is the adjustments menu. I hope you've learned something. I hope it's helped you out. And I hope you have a wonderful day.